Hey guys, I'm Mezzy. Since the War Within Alpha launched last week, a lot of interviews and videos have come out with brand new information. It's way too much to cover all in one video, so today I'll be going over the new information we've learned about dungeons, Mythic Plus, raids, PvP, gear, classes, and specs. Later this week I'll put out one more video about the other subjects that we've learned about. So welcome to this limited time revival of WoW Weekly News Edition. Let's get into it. To start with, Dungeons and Mythic Plus. The Season 1 dungeon rotation contains 4 old dungeons and 4 new dungeons. Ara-kara, City of Echoes, City of Threads, the Stone Vault, the Dawnbreaker, Mists of Tyrna Scythe, the Necrotic Wake, Siege of Borealis, and Grim Battle. Like previous old expansion dungeons, Grim Battle will get a rework that keeps the spirit of the dungeon. There will still be a bombing run. Now, sidetracking to Dawn of the Infinite for a second, Dawn of the Infinite was a progression experience and the team would like to do more of that. Additionally, in Season 4, Dawn of the Infinite is tuned much higher so it feels and rewards like a mini raid. Now back to the War Within, the team is talking about how they can make Mythic Plus affixes more interesting. They'll be talking about Mythic Plus affixes soon, but they are not yet ready to talk about it. The team is also still talking and looking at new affixes, as well as positive affixes with a harder base difficulty. Now they say that there will always be some tension with affixes, but they do want to continue experimenting with it. They've even discussed having a PvP brawl-like feature to experiment with things for Mythic Plus. A last thing on affixes, there is no seasonal affixes planned for the War Within. Other than that, in terms of dungeons, they're going to try and make any dungeon part of the Mythic Plus rotation possible as a Mythic 0 dungeon, so that players in that bracket have seasonal changing content as well. And they plan to do the same for Heroic dungeon queues as well. They want Heroic dungeon queues to also have the dungeons in the current seasonal rotation. Now when it comes to queuing, the goal is to allow cross-faction queuing when you have a full group sometime during the War Within. Now when it comes to follower dungeons, the Rookery will have a follower dungeon from the get-go as it's part of the campaign. There's no confirmation on if all 8 dungeons will be follower dungeons straight from the start. And lastly, when doing the Rookery as a follower dungeon, the NPCs joining you will be very specific NPCs to the story, so no generic NPCs from Exile's Reach. Alright, let's move on to raids. Despite first saying it for patch 10.15 or 10.17 and then before the end of Dragonflight, the team is still talking about making BFA raids more accessible or really soloable for transmog farming. Now for Season 1, in the first week of the season, the Mythic raid will not be available, but they might only do the Heroic week for the first tier of the expansion, and then have the Mythic raids be open in week 1 in later tiers. Now, in terms of the final boss, they're unlikely to test the final boss on the beta on the lower difficulties if their confidence internally in tuning and quality is high. They also currently don't have anything to say on the tuning intentions for the end of raid Mythic bosses. In terms of how many raids there will be, they actually don't have a specific number of raids they're committing yet to for the War Within. And while there's always some feedback on it, they have no plans to change from the 20-man Mythic raiding format. Now last thing on raiding, they would like to explore the ability to spectate while dead. Alright, let's move on to seasons. To start with something that didn't really fit anywhere else, they're not really happy with high-end content becoming about pressing a cooldown to survive a boss mechanic to otherwise go from 100% health straight down to 0. They have no big changes planned for Season 1, but they will continue to iterate to improve on mechanics. In terms of season lengths, they're actually quite happy with the seasons and raid tiers lasting around 5 months. And they do like having a fated or awakened season at the end of the expansion, but they're not ready to commit to always doing it. They're very much listening to feedback from players on the awakened season. And lastly, looking even further ahead, the plans for Season 4 in the War Within are not finalized. Okay, moving on to PvP. Blizzard knows they need to do more, so other than the new Battleground, rated Battlegrounds are being replaced by the Battleground Blitz. And that's it, moving on. Yeah, sorry PvPers. Alright, moving on to gear and itemization. To start with, the tier sets are not going anywhere, and in fact, delves will be included in the ways to obtain them in addition to the usual raids, Mythic Plus and PvP. Flight Stones on the other hand are being replaced with the evergreen Valor Stones. Obviously this is just a name change. It's also going to become easier to gear alts. Outside of the highest item levels, Warbound gear will be fairly common. And last thing they said on itemization, they have no intention to return to big borrowed power systems. Alright, let's move on to the final subject of the day, classes and specializations. They have plans to expand the classes that Drakthir can be, but it won't be at launch, and the non-evoker Drakthir classes will have an emphasis on playing in their Visage forms. Now when it comes to the hero talents, many of the hero talents have changed after the community gave feedback on the hero talents blog posts. In fact, the Oracle Priest is no longer support oriented, but instead focused on priest healing. Now some class talent trees are being updated to make room for new hero talents buttons on your action bars. They plan on really paying attention to prevent button bloat with the addition of hero talents. When it comes to hero talents balance, they will do what feels right for the most players. That could mean tuning a hero talent tree differently for one spec that uses it compared to another. And then we have some tidbits that don't really fit together as well. On the aesthetics side, they have no plans for a hero class heritage set. And it's likely that in Midnight, when the level cap goes up again, they'll add new talent points to the existing talent trees. When it comes to augmentation evokers, they consider them to be a success. With the War Within, they'll add better combat log tracking to support them. One thing they are looking at right now is the classes and specs that don't provide a buff to raid groups. You shouldn't have to feel like you need to exclude a class because they don't provide a buff for the group. And lastly, when it comes to the new Earth and Allied race, they'll have unique racials. As you can see, a ton of information was given throughout the interviews, and it's definitely worth checking out the full versions of them. I'll put a link to my written summaries in the description. They each contain the sources for the full interviews, so definitely check them out. That's going to be it for today. Things are developing rather quickly with the War Within, so I'll get started on the roundup of the information on other subjects right after this. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and if you'd like to keep up with more than just WoW videos, be sure to follow me over on Twitch and Twitter. For now, I'm Mezzy, and I'll see you again next time.